Fatherhood isn't easy, but in Autismland, it's a journey like no other. Join Mark de Grasse as we explore the highs, lows, and everything in between of raising children on the autism spectrum. With real stories, practical advice, and a touch of humor, we're here to navigate this unique journey together. For dads navigating life on the autism spectrum, you're not alone.
Hey everyone, welcome to Dads in Autismland, where we talk everything fatherhood and raising our autistic kids. And if you didn't know, autistic kids grow up, and a lot of times we only think of the children's side of it, how to raise young children with autism. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of us have to take care of our kids for a lifetime. Me included. My son's 13; he's now 190 pounds. A lot of times I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to keep him healthy for as long as possible? So fitness and health are a big part of what we do as fathers. And that's why today we have Eric Chessen on. He is the founder of Autism Fitness, which is a fitness organization that specifically talks about teens and adults with autism and how to stay in shape. So welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
So a lot of times, just like I said in the intro, we don't really think of that of the later years. But a lot of dads I've had on the show have 35-year-old, 45-year-old autistic children that they still are caring for.
Yep.
And health. We recently had a scare with my son where he was in the hospital, and it really came into my focus where I'm like, okay, his health has to be a primary focus. So just to get started, why don't you talk about why you founded Autism Fitness?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got started back in the early 2000s, and I had started as a personal trainer working with general population. And I was in graduate school for behavior science. I had a classmate who said, "Hey, would you be interested in working in this research and education program with teenagers on the autism spectrum? We've never had a dedicated fitness program." And clearly you have some of that background and some of that experience as well. So that's how I really got started and began not only working with those individuals, but also underwent much more intensive training in applied behavior analysis. And I was afforded an interdisciplinary model of how to consider things, how to practice, how to assess, and then how to address. So Autism Fitness became a culmination of that, and it was only by the process of starting to write a little bit about my experiences and starting to do some presentations, and then I was being contacted by behavior therapists and other specialists who said, "Hey, would you, work with this individual, or what can you do here?" And from there it became, more of a standardized process that I developed out of necessity, because there was no blueprint, at least that I could find in like 2002, 2003 when I started, for integrating best practices as they related to fitness, particularly strength and conditioning, the exercise science side of things, and then the behavior science and positive support side. So it culminated in kind of a hybrid model, because I found that I always loved the clinical side of things. So if you have the why, I can give you the how. Like, how do you integrate this? What are we looking at from the perspective of assessing fitness skills, assessing fitness readiness, motivation, which is a big one that we can go into. And then in 2017, I launched the Autism Fitness certification for both professionals and parents. And now we have, as of this month, we have close to, if not 600 Autism Fitness certified pros worldwide.
Wow, that's incredible. And it's so funny because I was in fitness for about a decade, and
Mhm.
it's funny how much the behavior science comes into it, especially when it comes to even just neurotypical
Oh, totally.
training.
Yeah.
How,
Yeah.
how do you motivate just your average person to say, "Hey, I need you to get up and move around for 15 minutes a day, and you're going to get all the results that you want."
Yeah.
Even at that simple level, it's really difficult to get people motivated. So why don't we just kind of start there, where it's like, how do you get autistic people to, do the actions necessary to execute the exercises and then kind of maintain the fitness?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there are so many layers to it. Because number one, I'll preface it with saying there's no such thing as an autism specific
Mm.
exercise. And what's great about exercise science is we can draw from things that we already know are going to be effective, and they're not so far out of the norm in terms of developing strength, developing lean mass, developing better motor planning and execution that we would have with the neurotypical population. It's
Mm.
the implementation, particularly with modifying exercises, that's the most important thing. So I make no secret about the programming modalities that I use. You know, all of my athletes, they squat, they push, they pull, they carry, some locomotion involved. Also, that's programming is or should be the easiest part of it. The
Mm.
motivation factor. So the motivation factor is twofold or threefold because typically, and I have athletes who I work with who, drive themselves to the gym and are motivated to participate, are getting a lot for themselves that they recognize and can articulate out of the fitness program. And then I have some athletes, in their teens, in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, who may not necessarily be able to communicate their needs or their experiences all the time. Either they have an augmented or some type of individualized communication system, or it becomes a situation where there needs to be a lot more interpretation. When I have an individual who, let's say, is a level three or even level two diagnosis, where they need regular support throughout the day, I can't necessarily make the assumption that they are motivated to do fitness because of X,
Mm.
right? There are really three reasons why anybody goes to the gym or works out. Number one is, and no one of these is better than the other. They're just the three silos. So number one is going to be body comp,
Mm.
building muscle, like, lose fat, conditioning, that sort of thing. Second is going to be sports performance, whether it's, you know, golf or jujitsu or mountain climbing or kayaking, hiking, competitive, non-competitive, whatever. Someone wants to get stronger, get more powerful, develop speed for their particular sport, from general to specific. And the third is the life skill silo. So, parents or grandparents or anybody else, I want to work out because I want to feel better and be safer, more stable, and more active in my daily life, have more energy, all these good things. I can't necessarily, unless I'm having a conversation with one of my athletes, determine that any three of those reasons are going to be pertinent to
Mm.
them because of some of the cognitive challenges that we have, whether they are true or whether they need to be pieced out for that individual later on, because it's not necessarily a question of cognitive functioning as far as intelligence. It's being able to make the connection for that individual. So if I have, let's say, a 25-year-old whose parent is bringing them in to work with me for the first time, I can't make the assumption that that individual, unless they articulate it to me, has one of those three main
Mm.
reasons for wanting to engage in that exercise program. They may not know why they are there, what's going on, what the purpose is, why I'm having them, press a weight overhead and then bring it back down and then, repeat that for 10 hours. Because all of these things we take for granted, but they are so abstract if they're
Mm.
not tied to some type of meaningful reinforcer. And for most people who don't want to be in the gym and don't look forward to deadlift day the
Mm.
way that I would or you might, they are in there for a secondary reinforcer. They train so that they can
Mm.
X, fill in the blank. So there's a second degree of meaningfulness that I have to provide to many of my athletes. I have to make exercising mean something to them. And it might not even be reiterating over and over, oh, this is going to get you stronger for, X in the outside, because that still may be abstract. I need to, as a coach, be super present to what's going on for that athlete and be able to reinforce them in the moment, because that 25 or 35 or 45-year-old athlete may never care about a secondary reason to be in the gym, but while I have them there, if I can make that a great experience for them and they feel better, however that's defined for them afterwards, then something is good. Something good is happening, and we know that over a long enough time with consistency, that those capabilities, the strength, the stability, that resilience is going to generalize to different situations.
Yeah, and that's it's an issue for neurotypical or not.
Yeah.
But what you said about the ability of your average person to visualize the future, that's really what a lot of fitness people sell on too. Like, hey, do this, go through the pain for these 6 weeks, and you're gonna lose 20 pounds, or you're gonna be able to climb up the
Right.
stairs, or all these different aspects which we could think about. But with your autistic kids, if I took my son Damien and said, hey, all right, Damien, I need you to lift up these weights because it's going to strengthen your knees. And as you get bigger, that's an important aspect of your health. He won't even give me a response. He definitely won't take it to heart or allow it to motivate him. He's very here and now. So we see, because he goes to Fortis Therapy Center in Dripping Springs, they motivate him just then. They literally will hold up his little laptop that's playing Monsters Inc. And as he's doing
Right.
Farmer's Walk, he's watching it and he's doing the Farmer's Walk, and that's enough motivation. Or they'll just sing a song and then that's the motivation and that's
Yeah.
enough. So with your aspects, do you have some of that, I don't know, instant feedback, or what do you call it? The ability
Oh, yeah.
to motivate like now?
Yeah. Well, we have, primary and secondary reinforcers, and what we usually want to do is move the secondary reinforcer into primary territory where we want to do the thing for the sake of doing it because, it feels good. And over time, we recognize that this is a positive, or for us, it's a positive experience. So one of the two big tools or effective tools that I utilize consistently across the board with all my athletes. Number one is choice, and number two is behavior specific praise. And these are two big coaching tools that can be utilized with any population. But choice, for example, I did an assessment session with a 13-year-old the other day. And as soon as he comes in on the dry erase board, I said, "Hey, you may not be familiar with, all of these exercise." And he was articulating pretty well, and he was a little bit shy. And, of course, given the situation, I said, "Hey, I've got two or three warm-up exercises here, and and I'll show them to you. Pick which one you want to do first, and we'll go from there because I want to give my athlete a sense of
Hmm.
ownership as soon as I possibly can. And if you think about the autism population, particularly adolescents and teens, and even adults, how many times a day do they have the opportunity to advocate for themselves, even
Hmm.
as in a structured situation? It's like, okay, what do you want to do with relation to this particular activity? Usually you get a lot of, oh, do this or you have to, which makes nothing fun. And it's the bane of my professional existence is when people go into, oh, you have to, because
Yeah.
you're not creating stickiness there. So offering choice between two exercise, and what's cool about this in psychology and the science of choice, you really only need a field of two or three. If you ask
Hmm.
someone, oh, what do you want to do in your workout today? Everybody, even neurotypical people, will be like, I don't know, because it's too wide
Hmm.
a field. But if you narrow it down and say, hey, do push throws first or scoop throws first, and I'll show them both. Oh, let's try scoop throws. Awesome, let's do it. Great choice. The second one is behavior specific praise. So, and this is one that I coach coaches on constantly. It's something that we go over ad nauseum. I wouldn't even call it as ad nauseum because it's so necessary in the certification. But rather than saying great job, great job, great job, oh, great job, great job, that was good, great job. It's the great job or the great jobification of a
Hmm.
session. If I'm going to say great job, I need to fill in a blank after that. Great job with that scoop throw. Your feet were rooted. It was perfect. You were using that hip drive. So what I'm doing is giving a very particular feedback to exactly what that athlete was doing correctly. And it serves two purposes. Number one is it halts me or it prohibits me from doing the not like that, do it correctly, you know how to do it, all that stuff that is so ineffective. And it's also I it's counterproductive and it's not going to bridge that gap between non-motivation and motivation for that
Mm.
athlete. And the second thing it does is it picks up on what the athlete is doing well and the likelihood that they are going to repeat that effort again if they know what the expectation is. So both of those things, the choice of exercises and the behavior specific praise, actually in a very real way feed into expectation management. And
Mm.
expectation management is the key to everything in fitness, because if someone says, hey, and we hear this and see this all the time, get abs in 6 weeks. Great, you're lying, but show me how. Right? You already have abs. Are you talking about visible abs? Well, then what are we talking about on the nutritional side? I mean, we could, but we're not going to get into all of this. But yeah, those are the two things that I think are my biggest go-tos in those
Mm.
situations, because I want to develop a positive rapport and a partnership with that athlete, because I want this something to be something that's sustainable and enjoyable in their lives.
Awesome. Do you find that some movements are easier to teach? Because I know, if well, it just depends on the person. Because
Yeah.
I've seen videos of, say, autistic child who couldn't jump over one small 4-inch hurdle, and then all of a sudden in
Yeah.
the next video they're able to do an entire ninja course, and it looks
Sure.
incredible because you can't, honestly, when they start moving like an athlete, you don't even perceive them as autistic anymore. I think there are, cues in terms of how, like, my son moves, like how he walks, and different things he does. Like, one of the typical kind of physical things you'll see is they don't flex their stomachs, where it's kind of like your average person will stay upright by keeping their abs tight. A lot of autistic children or just autistic people will not. They'll relax their stomach, and you can see it. Have you found that there's certain movements or ways to teach those movements that resonate more? And most of the time,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
talking about severely autistic.
Oh sure. You know what? It spans the spectrum though, because I've had highly articulate, very capable individuals who still the motor planning, and this is something. It's interesting because in the vast amount of autism research, there's some really uh, good evidence to suggest that individuals on the autism spectrum, regardless of what, at current time, a level, 1 through 3 diagnosis, have motor planning issues. And I mean, I'm sure, you and your family having been through all of the, you know, diagnostic steps and specialists have heard things like low muscle tone and poor core stability, which are kind of they're diagnoses, but they're filler diagnoses too, because then
Mhm.
what does it mean and what do we do about it? But I think so in terms of specific exercises, squatting and hinging are to
Mm.
hinging especially because that whole, maintaining neutral spine thing is really tough. I think that the biggest challenge is often that kinesthetic awareness, which is just a fancy way of saying mind muscle connection.
Mm.
Like when I'm squatting, can I feel myself slowing down and holding the movement for, like an eccentric or lowering of 2 or 3 seconds so that the movement is controlled and is providing the biggest muscular contraction and therefore net benefit in that set. The autistic population typically has a really difficult time with that.
Mm.
And the reason that I developed the PAC profile system, the physical, adaptive, and cognitive, is sometimes that is strictly a physiological deficit. Like, okay, they just don't have the hamstring and glute strength to perform this slowly. And sometimes it's an expectation thing. So it's more on the cognitive of this individual is not differentiating between doing 10 repetitions to the box really quickly or really slowly. It's just, do the set of 10 and that's it. So that's where we have to build in meaningfulness with it. Because I can't just say, most of the time, I can't just say, like go slower because that's the way to do it. I have to scaffold. A lot of this is scaffolding, because if I can create awareness or build awareness for that individual on the correct performance of that exercise, it's going to have exponentially more benefit for them. And that is a process. That is a process.
So is that process done through, say, progression? Because I know with, like you were saying, you can't say slow down or use your full range of motion. Like there's just no connection with those terms
Yeah.
and what they
Yeah.
do. Is it more of a demonstration process then, or how does it
Yeah.
work to show
Yeah,
that?
that's great. You're right on track. So one of the other strategies that we utilize is something that I called label, demo, do, and cue. So we label the exercise, and it doesn't it can be less and less structured as time goes on. But in those first couple sessions, I can say to an athlete, like my athlete Evan, okay, Evan, you're gonna do a squat. I'm going to show you first, and then you're going to go. So I labeled the exercise. This is a squat, so that we can come back to it. So they have a working knowledge of the terminology, and it's nice. We can build, some new target words and build them into language, and cool secondary benefits of this. Then I'm going to demonstrate the squat. So label, demo, the demonstration, and then do and cue. The do is the athlete doing the squat, and then I can figure out, okay, how do I need to modify this? What language do I need to use while they're doing the squat? What is going to be most available and effective for them? Because I can't assess anything until I'm assessing something. So once they're doing the squat, now I can figure out, okay, they need a lower box, they need a higher box, they need upper body support holding onto a band because of, a trunk stability issue right now. Once I can make that determination after they've done one or two or even three sets of squats, I can say, okay, this is the place to start. It may change next week, it may change the week after, but I know right now this is our baseline. So it's a process of determining where that athlete is starting. And this again can pertain to the physical functioning, adaptive functioning or motivation, and then cognitive functioning. But until I have a baseline on those, I can't really develop an individualized or an effective program. And all three of those need to be addressed. If something falls off, then it's a coaching skill or strategy that I don't have an answer for. So I need all three of those things in some way, shape, or form answered. And then I can say, all right, well, I know what's going to work here.
Hey, Dad. Yeah, you. The one who stayed up researching sensory toys at 2 a.m. The one learning about IEPs while watching game highlights. We see you. The Pathfinder Collective is where dads like us connect beyond the podcast. No judgment, just real talk about raising kids on the spectrum. $50 gets you lifetime access to our Facebook group, bi-monthly workshops with experts who actually get it, and yeah, a free shirt to replace that one with all the inexplicable stains. Because sometimes you need more than advice. You need another dad who nods and says, same here, man. Go to dadsinautismland.com/pathfinder.
So is there initial assessment where you say, okay, and does that include, I don't know, kind of the cognitive abilities of the athlete? Because like I said, with my son's nonverbal. So it's like you could say whatever you want to him. He's not going to understand it, and he's definitely not going to implement it. Would that then go into the program? Like, okay, we're going to have to cue differently, or we're going to have to progress differently? Like, how's that affected?
It's going to depend a lot on that individual, because I've had non-verbal or limited verbal individuals who understand every single word that I say, or over time they pick up on it. Even some of my non-verbal cues, they're very acute. I've learned very much to only go on the information that is very clear and evident to me, because I could be 3 or 4 sessions in. And I've had this happen even, 20 something years into my career. I've had sessions where all of a sudden an athlete does something or says something or responds to a cue. And I'm like, oh, okay, wasn't expecting that, but that's good. Something. So I've learned to be not even cautiously optimistic, but not necessarily fill in blanks where I have blanks, but just hold the expectation that they may have a cognitive capability, whether it's, rote memory or whether it's language, or even if it's like the most finite cue or very specific cue of like altering their foot position.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, okay, they do have that. Interesting. So it's so cliche to say never assume because I do have to go on some information that I don't necessarily have, ironclad, but where it becomes more individualized is again, what's going on now? How are they relating to this verbal cue? How are they relating to this physical guidance? I tend to do very little physical guidance, but if I demonstrate this cable row for them, what is their interpretation of my doing that cable row? How close to exact is it? And then I can make my modifications there. And then, with the eventual goal of them being able to do it independently.
Awesome. No, that totally makes sense. Now with that said, what happens when they do like a meltdown? Like they're like last week we actually had a session where
Yeah,
I think there was another child in there and he was
sure.
crying and that really bothers my son. So he just was kind of upset for the
Sure.
majority of the session. Do you have, I don't know, ways you handle that or you recommend handling that?
Yeah, well, certainly depends on, professional scope of practice. Also, when you get someone who's like, I really want to do this and I really want to work with the autism population, and I've never worked with them before. It's like, all right, well, maybe you want to go do, get some observational experience and speak with parents and speak with professionals also, because I would never say, hey, just jump on into it and learn as you
Mm,
go, because I mean, that
disaster.
affords nobody anything good. At the same time, we want to be able to provide the individual with as many preemptive strategies as possible, whether that's checking in or, taking breaks. I think that when we can recognize escalation before it escalates,
Mm,
is the most advantageous. Of course, that's not always possible, but when we're switching around between which thing is the most important right now, like the physical, the adaptive, and the cognitive, and we get to the point where right now adaptive is the most important. If I have an individual whom I've been working with for a little while, and I can pick up on some of those precursor behaviors, because that's them, telling me or telling everybody else that they need a break or something's going on, or if I notice that they're talking less than they usually do, I might check in and say, hey, do you need a break? Or,
mm,
do you, want to walk up and down that, turf a couple times? And, once the the meltdown or the dysregulation, whatever is going on, it's going to depend a lot on that individual, the safety level of the situation and the environment. I have had some interesting situations arise in my career, some of which were handled really well, some of them looking back, just out of, professional development, I think I think could be preempted also. But again, it comes back to not to be redundant, but expectation management also. It's like, okay,
mm.
what's going on and how do I need to support this individual right now? I've had sessions with athletes where we get like one set of one exercise done because that's their threshold for that day also. And I look at it as, if we can have that success today, then it gives us a better likelihood of having that success next week or the next session
Mm.
also. So, the meltdown or the dysregulation or an athlete becoming, I think anxiety is a big factor also, which comes back to setting an expectation and giving the athlete a sense of control in the situation.
Mm.
Because if you have to them the entire time, have to do this, have to, okay, it's time, come on, or, the clapping, it's like, that is so, I'd melt down in that situation. I wouldn't even consider it a meltdown. I'd consider that completely justified. So, I think treating every individual with a measure of respect and considering them, an equal participant in it. And it's not to say that that has a, 100% effectiveness rate, but it's a good start.
No, no, that sounds like a great way to do it. And that's essentially what we did too, where it was like, okay, we usually have you do these three circuits, but we're only getting through a half of one, and
Sure.
that's good enough, you know?
Yeah. And you have to buffer that with the fact that, look, when I have an athlete to, coming in to see me, that's our one time this week for 50 minutes or 55 minutes that we have. So there is an impetus to get something done. So there's this, I'm remiss in using the term balance, but there is a balance between, the athlete, being autonomous, and also, which you would do with, yeah, I think, anybody else also. It's like if you have a neurotypical client and they're in, 2 times a week, those are your, 2 hours that you have a week to train. So it's not as though we have limitless time
Hmm.
and complete, carte blanche to train anytime. Like, this is kind of it. So there are some constraints around that as well.
That makes sense. Now, for the so let's say that you've been able to train them, they progress. What kind of results can people expect? For my
Yeah.
son, we've seen he does seem more confident in his own way, which
Yeah.
is he's gained is stronger than me, which is ridiculous. But I mean, like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, good motivation for me to get stronger. But now he actually enjoys exercising, and he has added a lot of movements to what he's capable of doing, which has been amazing. Have you seen what kind of results have people gone from this type of training?
Yeah, there are some primary and some secondary or tertiary ones. The primary ones, a really good track record of, once we get somebody to a certain level of strength in a particular exercise, that, squat, press, push up, cable row, whatever those are. At some point, it is going to generalize to activities of daily living. And I think for people who are not necessarily in the fitness world, or not training themselves, or not physically active, sometimes, again, it seems a little bit abstract, like, oh, yeah, I know exercise is good. Like, nobody is going to, it'd be interesting if I'd love to have that debate sometime, but I think very few people are going to raise their hand and say, I don't think exercise is good at all. I think it's overrated. I don't think it does anything. All right, great. That's an outlier. So I think it's safe to say most people recognize exercise as a good thing. But then it's, well, if you're not regularly physically active, particularly with strength training, then it becomes this abstract thing of, oh, yeah, I know it's good. And, like, oh, okay, I know it's good to, eat vegetables and protein, that kind of thing. But are you actually doing it? I think the disconnect there is also tying it back, especially for parents, because there are plenty of parents there who are not physically active, but recognize, again, that this is a good thing. Or if they were given that opportunity for their son or for their daughter, they would take advantage of it because they understand it's a good thing. Tying it to activities of daily living, like, can you carry groceries? Can you take a heavy laundry and, throw it into the top loader? Walking up and down stairs, even the safety factor, of this, or, walking around a shopping center. All of these things are highly likely to occur when someone is engaging in a well-designed fitness program for a certain amount of time. So those are the primary, and that's my goal, is to develop skills that are going to generalize outside the gym. The secondary or tertiary benefits of that, you had mentioned, confidence, and and then you can talk about, a sense of accomplishment also. All of those are there, but I don't know what they are necessarily going to look or sound or feel like for each one of my athletes. So I'm never going to lead with, hey, build confidence in you, because I don't know what that's going to be for each individual. I can say that when I have an athlete who is coming into the gym consistently, and they just walk in and they get started, and they're requesting to do a particular exercise, or they seem a lot more focused, or it's reported to me that they have a lot fewer dysregulated or stereotypical behaviors when they're coming in. Okay, obviously something is good is happening. Um, at the same time, I just have to go situation by situation. I think it's important to point out that again, the autistic population, the neurodivergent population are human beings, so I don't think it's that far-fetched to say that the same physiological, cognitive, social, emotional benefits that we see for the neurotypical population are provided for them through fitness.
Mm.
But at the same time, it's going to be a little bit different, for everybody. When I hear, I'll give you a story. I had one athlete years ago, and I used to call her the juggernaut because she was just so powerful. And we did a lot of medicine ball throw work, and her mom told me that one day in school they were doing ball throws, in the gym, and this young lady, because she had been working with like a 4 pound medicine ball with me, she took this unweighted ball and just like cannon shot it at the instructor or the teacher, and they're like, "Whoa, wait a minute!" I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like that's a clear indication that something good is happening. And me as as a coach, I'm thinking like, okay, awesome. Like that's really cool. Like generalization of the skill, yes, but also the expectation was, oh, maybe she can do this. It's like, no, you need to back up. This this girl's
Oh,
got it.
oh, I love that, and I think that's the unique part. It's kind of, like I said with my son, he's been playing basketball a bunch, and so he makes baskets all the time, and he's almost casual about it. He's like, "Eh," and then it just goes in. He did like five in a row, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is, and I think that's the neat part about the physical training, is they actually, like you're saying, they could get the same results as anybody else, and we don't have to limit them like we maybe in academics, where it's like my son's not going to be writing books anytime soon, but he physically he's super strong, and he's
Yeah,
very agile. I think and that's another kind of stereotype where it's like, okay, is the proprioception there? Do they know where their body is in relation to all these things? I'm like, wow,
yeah,
my
yeah,
son certainly does. He never falls, like
sure.
rarely
Yeah,
falls.
absolutely. And just, from the independence standpoint, and independence is going to mean a lot for different people, but just having a few of those "I've got this"
Mm,
moments. I think, if we operationally define confidence, it's the feeling of, oh, I've got this. Regardless of what it is. But when you have an individual who previously, there's a story that comes up a lot with parents, like their son or daughter will never pick up, 4 bags of groceries, the
yeah.
everything in one haul carry trip. But when you've got the, I've got this, is like, yeah, I'll carry it. Whatever. Let's do this. And I think that more than anything else, when we think about, especially in adulthood, how many times we feel like that,
Mm.
as adults, or how many opportunities we have where like, oh, I'm pretty good with this. I've got this. But to have that consistently through exercise, I think that's one of the biggest, like, indirect benefits and things that we could build, regardless of the diagnosis, or whether you have a highly independent individual or someone who needs a lot of support. That's something that can be built in. It just takes, the persistence. It takes, the right training, and it takes, meeting that individual where they are.
I love that, and I think it should be, hopefully, if anybody is listening to this and needs some encouragement for this, I think it helps the person definitely, but from the parent perspective, like just now with my son who's enjoying basketball, it's incredible because it really puts another dynamic into what my son can do, what we know he enjoys doing, and now we're like, oh yeah, Damien's a basketball player. Like
Yeah.
it's amazing for the family. Have you heard similar results just from the autistic parents if they're the ones
Yeah,
enrolling their kids?
I'll get stuff. I love very specific stuff also. Like the I can do that. I've had parents who say, "Oh yeah, they said, I do this with Coach Eric, and I can do this here." And that just, to me, again, it's a skill that's transferring. So the work that we're doing in the gym or the fitness session is making an impact, on their lives. One of my favorite recent stories. So I have a young man in his 30s who is, and I'm sure some parents can relate, very rigid about his
Mm.
schedule and the days that he's going to come in and the times that he's going to come in and the days that he's not going to come in. So we were leading up to New Year's this past winter. And because it was going to be New Year's Eve day, he decided he wasn't coming in. And I said, "Well, you know what, Jay, I'm going to be here. I have other sessions. If you don't want to come in, that's your choice, but I'm going to be here." And I figured, okay, we're, canceling this week's session and he's not coming in. And then a day before, I get a text from him. Hey, Eric, this is Jay. Can I come in for my session?
Mm.
Like, dude. Yeah, and not only that, I had booked another athlete in his session because I figured Jay's not coming in. And I said, "Oh, I'd love to do your session. Could you do an hour earlier?" So now two things. Number one, he wasn't going
Wow.
to do that day at all. Number two, now I'm changing his time, right? Which is,
It's
as
amazing.
some parents and professionals can relate, certainly going to be the end of conversations about this. And he said, "Yeah, sure, that works." And I
Wow.
texted his mom right after, and this is, again, 2 decades plus into my career. I'm like, did not expect that. So even though it wasn't necessarily a physical aspect of performance, like this is someone who all indicators would say because of the way that he processes, his schedule and the constraints he puts around it, it's not going to happen. And he's like, "No, let's do it." That
Wow.
tells me a lot.
Oh no, that's huge. The scheduling and the flexibility. I mean, it shows huge growth. And I think, just from a normal fitness perspective, when you get to the point where you're like, I get to go to the gym, I
Yeah.
get to go exercise. I mean, that's how I am now, where I'm kind of like, oh my
Right.
gosh, I get to go to the gym and
Yeah, it's a privilege too. I mean, if you're looking on a big enough world view, and like it is a privilege to be able to train.
it
So,
is. Well, and you feel good doing it, even if you feel
right.
bad doing it, if that
Oh
makes,
yeah,
if you've
I
trained, you
don't
know what you're talking about.
I,
Like,
I don't think anybody has ever, injuries aside, or if someone, pushes it too hard, but nobody ever really like regrets going in and just getting the workout done. And that's the other part of it, with motivation too. There's so much made around how important motivation is, and it is, but it's fleeting also. Consistency, like doing the thing when you don't want to do the thing, is going to ultimately produce the greatest result because you and I are outliers. We want to train. Most people don't. Even most people who train don't want to train. Like it's a very small segment of the training population that actually wants to train on a regular basis or do that next set of exercises, whatever. And again, it's tied to that secondary reinforcer. So, to have a situation where someone wants to come in and train in and of itself because that is it is their moment or moments of reinforcement, it is a big deal. So, I work with or I speak with a lot of parents who say, "Oh, my, son or my daughter hates to exercise." And we have to deconstruct that too. It's like, what do we mean by
mhm.
hate to exercise? And what did you try? And all of these things. I usually answer questions with a lot more questions because I want to get to the specifics of what are we talking about and then what do we do about it also.
No, that's a huge component of being successful with fitness. And even for me, like I don't want to train most of the time. I just know how beneficial it is and I know how I'll feel afterwards. And so I'm
Yeah,
like,
I'm
all
glad I
right.
don't want to, but I'm glad I did.
Exactly. Yeah, you never regret it. Like, oh, I wish I didn't do that workout this morning. Like, no, no, you're gonna feel good. You got it done. And I think even if the autism person can't communicate that, they really do appreciate it. And even now, I just try to reinforce it with my son. I'm like, all right, we're going to work out. We're going to work out. Like, let's
Yeah.
get ready and try to make him excited about it because it is so beneficial in a million different ways, and ways you will not expect. And I think that's a good way, for dads to approach this, where it's just like, you don't know what your, son or daughter is going to get out of this, but it's going to be good. So
Yeah. Well, you look at it as an investment also, both figuratively but literally also. Like investing in the stock market and in mutual funds isn't exciting, but over time with compound interest, it's the same exact thing with fitness. Not every session needs to be the most exciting or breakthrough situation for 45 minutes or 50 minutes. It just needs to get done. And then 3 months from now, it turns into 3 years from now, it turns into, 13 years from now, whatever. It's just putting in the work. That's what it is. It's an investment. Nobody, on a routine basis looks at their stock portfolio and says, "Oh my God, like I'm amazed," because that's what it is. But over time, it's going to build. It's the same exact thing with exercise.
No, and again, just for the autism parents out there, it's, for me, the health of my son is huge, because if you've had to deal with somebody with special needs and have a health issue on top of that, it's makes everybody's life a lot more difficult. So whatever you can do to keep your kids healthy, whether they are actual children or adults, is going to be very impactful on your life. And I definitely encourage you to get into a program or find an autism fitness coach, and they'll help you out. With that said, where do
Yep.
people learn more about finding autism fitness people?
I make it pretty easy. So autismfitness.com for everything on the certification, consulting. Again, we have, certified pros in over 10 different countries. And then on Instagram at the Autism Fitness, same thing on YouTube, the Autism Fitness as well. And now we have our Autism Fitness site certification, where we work with schools and ABA clinics and residential facilities to help them build meaningful and effective fitness programs that are sustainable over a long period of time.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Eric. It's been super informative. If you are a dad listening to this, definitely think about taking your autism adult or child to some fitness sessions. It's hugely beneficial for everybody involved, and you'd be shocked at what's possible physically for your kids, because for me, I am pretty shocked most of the time, especially how nonchalant my son is about making hoops. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. We'd be signing you up for a bunch of stuff. But thank you so much, Eric.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you, Mark.
All right. This has been the Dads and Autismland podcast. If you haven't listened to the episodes before, please check them all out. We try to give as many tips as possible for raising your autism kiddos. And we'd like to have professionals on. So a lot of times you'll hear us talking to ABA therapists, fitness professionals, PT, occupational, all the different avenues that you can seek. And also especially the dads with their real world experience with raising their kids. So thank you so much, and please subscribe.